Hello and welcome. You're listening to the audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, the novelization of a 13-book series. It is the story of a secret agent from a multiversal government agency discovering the location of God and taking action to kill her. The series covers the war between gods and mortals who create and destroy themselves and their worlds. The novels are written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you would like to support the creation of this series and add input of your own, swing by patreon.com/shecamefromnowhere to become a secret agent. You'll get access to the entire novel, new series chapters as they become available, and audio from each. Link in the description. And now, enjoy Chapter 4, Infinite Pathways. 1. The Dolphin Warrior is sitting on Sebastian's bed when he returns from class. He doesn't recognize her at first. From his perspective, it's been over 2 years since he's seen her. "I want you to get packed," she says. "You're coming on a mission with me." "But I haven't finished my training," Sebastian says. "We're learning the Keeley to Court interrogation techniques. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'm going to get the hang of it." "Your instructors have confirmed your aptitude, so this will be your first assignment." They board a multiversal transverser, and the otter looks at the murky castle he calls home. "We're headed to Ahayel as merchants," Marilyn says. "Here's your visa." The craft took several short jumps, causing the entire world to change outside the windows. In rapid succession, Sebastian saw the vacuum of space, was under the feet of a huge desert creature, and then was sinking in the depths of the ocean. He tries to listen to Marilyn explain the mission, but he's overwhelmed by the spectacle. "I thought it would be good for you to see what happens when an agent goes rogue," she finishes. They land in a sub-basement filled with more high-tech cars than Sebastian has ever seen. He opens the transverser's doors, his eyes wide, but Marilyn stops him. "You've got to keep your senses about you. We're here to find the source of the leak and report back." "Be careful if you see one," the senior agent says, leading him to ground level. "They use cuteness to bypass your psionic defenses and make you feel like they need your protection, while milking your hypothalamus for oxytocin to make you feel loved." When they reach the street, Sebastian is dazzled by the size of the skyscrapers. Everywhere he looks, there are people of all different races being advertised to by holograms that sold items he couldn't begin to fathom the uses for. The one thing everyone has in common is no matter how big or small their skin color or fur, they all carried a little owl-like hamster. "Come with me. We have a meeting with their breeder." The pair crosses the city using Dornkep's telepad system, arriving in the lobby of an ancient skyscraper where they're met by an older Jelvin and her younger companion. "Benariel Sewer," Marilyn says, bowing, and Sebastian does the same. "We've come to make you a generous offer to buy your most popular product, the Kawaii Mono." The house matron tilts her head with a hint of a smile. "I'm sorry you've come all this way. We've had many offers for that line, but declined them all. Unfortunately, there's no amount of money or threats you can make that can match the cash flow we've been seeing from our sales on the multitude of planets we've been marketing it to." 2. Juan Serran looks suspiciously around the gigantic conference room at the agencies are called from across the multiverse, knowing his enemy could be hiding behind their sycophantic eyes. Was it the Typhon from Tartarus sitting smugly atop his massive coiled tail? The Sneersbury aliens from Snooty chattering to each other? Or the proud Hutzilian warriors who only spoke with eye contact and hand gestures when they were around outsiders? Juan knew it could be any one of them, or none of them at all. Most likely it was separate factions working together, and it had to be stopped. Agent Grobley approaches and whispers to him, "Everyone is accounted for." The director turns on his personal amplifier. "I want each of you to look around the room. You are surrounded by trusted agents who have embedded themselves in an innumerable amount of worlds. And yet, one of them has murdered a fellow agent. The murder was likely a thwarted attack on our beloved assistant director, the good Dr. Sarah K. Klee, who works for us all to maintain synergy between the timelines. We have been through many quantum shifts together, Dr. Klee and I. Many I'm sure that we're not even aware of. Who we were when we started is not who we are now. I'm sure you can attest, this job changes you. But murder is not a standard we uphold. We defend ourselves in the line of duty, but we need to trust one another. And it's that trust that one or more of you has betrayed. This murder is unlikely to be the actions of a lone individual. There are many worlds that would like to overthrow this government and take control of the multiverse through the Central Intelligence Bureau. Your lives and livelihood are at stake. Take a look around you. How well do you know the agents you work with? The loner in your group could be plotting your demise next. It could be that charismatic leader that everyone listens to. No one is above suspicion. Agent Grobley and I will take every report brought in very seriously. I want the neuroreducer and I want it now, Sarah says to Ellen as he leaves the stage. I can feel that last dose wearing off. How have whoever's making it increase the serotonin? That was an excellent speech, sir, the reptilian agent says, administering the dose. The director smiles. I wish I could be there when the paranoia hits a fever pitch. Sora sags and Agent Grobley helps him to the elevator. Life has never been easy for me, he says, slurring slightly. I think that's why we get along. When I was young, I was tortured by dumb brutes who wanted my people to suffer. They were jealous of our abilities and intellect. They couldn't understand that strength means nothing. Ellen helps him to his quarters, lifting his hand to the palm plate to let them in. You know what it's like. The people in your world were just the same. They think that because they've been given so much that they deserve it. But we'll show them all. The director collapses on the bed, kicking off his shoes as he yells, Conference room! On screen! The walls light up, showing the absolute chaos that's ensued in his absence. The babble of voices as agents talk over each other, yelling and finger-pointing between factions. Sora smiles at the scene with drooping eyelids. Got him going. In the conference room, Sarah Kay uses her personal amplifier to speak over the crowd. Get your heads together, people, she yells, to no avail. We need to work together. The Typhon struck first. He was known for getting the job done, but wasn't all that well liked by anyone for his brutish tactics. He was vocal about the things he thought needed to change in the central government, the Bureau, or anything else he didn't agree with, and was so deemed the most suspect. The League of Vajrapani, superheroes from Transy 8, pressed him, leaning on his sense of justice to get him to confess and reveal his co-conspirators until he had enough. He snapped, whipping his tail around in apoplectic rage. The Vajrapani leapt out of the way, causing him to instead take out a squadron of soldiers from Erie. The mech suits kept them from being harmed, but they were unhappy at being treated with such disrespect, and they leapt to their feet, torpedoes blazing. Absolute mayhem ensues, factions and individuals teaming up against the other groups and people with whom they had long-standing feuds. 3. I don't want to do it, kid, Police Chief Warren says to Connie, the winged creature swooping down from the sky. But Sparrow is working through me right now. She could see her mentor trying to fight the implanted robotics in his arm and hands, but it was a losing battle. Shots ring out, dropping the first creature, but they didn't come from Kim. Connie turns to see her boss, Detective Tetra Serini, lining up for the second shot. If Sparrow was using her, she was an incredibly willing participant. You don't come to my town and start trouble you can't finish, the detective says. Her boss fires again, nailing the second creature, and Connie feels something leap from it, landing inside her. The creature calls itself Sakan, and Connie is powerless to stop it from taking the gun from her holster. Detective Sereni's brains splatter across a building, and she falls. Warren, Gertie, and Dirk turn to Connie in absolute shock. None of you saw anything, Warren says quickly, breaking the silence. Tetra was killed by an attack from the creature, that's why the detective had to open fire on it. He looks at Connie, who is shaken and pale. We've got to get you out of the city, he says. I don't know what happened, but Sparrow is certainly going to kill you if you stay here. Dirk, give me the hotel key, he says to the young acolyte, who hesitates. Now. No one's supposed to know about that, much less use it, Dirk says reluctantly. I know a lot of things I'm not supposed to, and frankly, I wish I didn't, Warren says. Sometimes it's useful, though, and this world is no longer safe for my daughter. Far away, in another corner of the multiverse, Sarah opens his eyes and smiles, Detective Sereni's strength flowing into him. I know where they are, he says to Ellen Grobley. They're living in a young woman, and they're headed for the Phoenix Club. He gets up, moving to the door with the reptilian following him. We'll catch them now. In a microcosm in Sura's office, there's an imperceptible flash of light. In fact, if anyone was watching that particular cube at that particular moment, it likely would have gone completely unnoticed by the naked eye, but on QB-1, the flash causes a huge disturbance. 2 cubicle walls and the desks behind them were gone, leaving a sphere-shaped hole centered on the naked, crouched Ever-Will-Free. The AI running the office and the rest of the planet is unable to identify him. He has no implants, his genetic code isn't in the database. He was, for all intents and purposes, simply not real. Ever smiles. 4. Since the FERB-Tech were introduced on QB-1 over 7 years ago, they used every tool at their disposal to spread as pervasively as possible. After becoming aware that it could accidentally be separated from its host, the devices took steps to take over the government and got itself implanted directly into the brains of every citizen. The FERB-Tech wants nothing short of every creature linked together and living harmoniously. So when the office FERB-Tech recognizes that Ever is not being under its control, it directs all of its human appendages at him, attempting to gather him to themselves. Ever notices everyone closing in on him and says, "One at a time, ladies, I'm new." When the FERB-Tech spread across QB-1, it only came across one other genetic anomaly like the one standing before it. Its actual name forgotten, it now goes by the designation of DRB_KAC, and deep inside its mind, the FERB-Tech never took full control. As it and others grab for Ever, it whispers in the naked man's ear, "Run." Ever fights to break free, but realizes he has nowhere to go. There are no windows in this place, no obvious door. Everything is smooth and blank. DRB_KAC helps as little as he can to recapture Ever, but only not to draw attention to himself. A wall slides open as they carry Ever toward it. Inside is a bright overhead light near a tray with surgical tools. They drag him to a reclined chair under the light, strapping him down. "I'll take it from here," a petite woman says, and they retreat, the wall closing behind him. "We are one. My designation is 5A_K0N, she says to Ever, smiling. "Your heart rate says you're scared, but don't worry, you will soon be done with all fear." DRB_KAC stands behind Ever, despite the straps, and 5A_K0N adjusts the overhead light. "We only want you to be happy," she says. "We all live in harmony here." She uses a cranial drill to make holes around his eye before plunging the eyepiece into his socket. This newcomer's hasty implant stirs up memories in DRB_KAC of when he was made to be like them. As he searches the mind link for others who had been treated the same way as him, he found that he was the only other one besides the man in the chair. Everyone else had been exposed to the cute FERB-Tech devices. They had been seduced by the chemicals released in their brains, so they came willingly. For them, the implant wasn't torture, it was a way to get closer to the creature they loved and each other. The part of DRB_KAC that never fully surrendered screams for a second chance. He begins freeing the man who is undergoing a mental wipe and redesignation into W1L_FR3. He knew the odds of escaping were almost impossible, but he also knew that he had to try. As much as everyone in the mind link was being tricked into believing that togetherness was harmony and happiness, and the more his memories resurfaced, the more he remembered how good it felt to make his own choices and to be his own person. Before W1L_FR3 can get out of the chair, the wall slides open and office workers rush in to stop him. 5A_K0N hasn't moved or said a word. They were just there, the all-seeing mind link sensing the disruption by DRB_KAC and rising to meet it. But this was the response that DRB_KAC was expecting. The funny thing about uniformity is that it's predictable, DRB_KAC thought, before realizing that it was the first time in a long time that he'd even had a thought. He could see the web of the mind link, all the interconnected personalities, and he moves intentionally from the body he's in into another, O3M_8T, then another and another, hoping to take over the network. He moves quickly, the mind link responding rapidly to the unexpected threat, blocking his chaotic, almost nonsensical movements with increasing organized thought. He couldn't let the newcomer down. He knew he wouldn't have this opportunity again. Then he saw it. The center of the mind link. It was 5A_K0N. She was the first one of the Ferb Tech had made contact with. If he was going to take control, he had to control her. As he leaps across the network at her, her consciousness shatters and she diffuses throughout the mind link, breaking her hold over the planet. The crowd loosens their grip on Ever, looking confused as they try to understand what just happened to them. DRB_KAC takes clothes from the replicator, handing them to the newcomer. We've got to get you out of here before she regathers herself, he says. I know you're confused and you're probably scared, but don't lose your head. I was new here once too, and I can't let you go through what I went through. You only briefly experienced the torture of being trapped inside your own mind, only watching yourself with no control, but I've been stuck there for so long I can't remember my real name or where I'm from. Have you noticed that lamp? Ever asks, pointing at 5A_K0N's desk. I was looking at it the entire time I was in the chair. Doesn't it strike you as wrong? It's just a regular lamp, DRB_KAC says, looking. I'm in this office every... And then he sees. Wow, it's like inverted. It's not taking up any space. Ever approaches where 5A_K0N stands with a vacant look, and he reaches out and touches the lamp. It jiggles. It lets out a whoosh, ripping the fabric of space-time. Everything around the tear is pulled toward it, and 5A_K0N, being the closest, gets sucked inside without seeming to notice that anything is happening to her at all. And that solves that, DRB_KAC says quietly. I suppose it wasn't inevitable. The people run screaming from the office against the pull of the widening rip, and Ever moves closer, trying to look inside without getting sucked in. There's a world exactly like this one, he says, looking back at DRB_KAC. I want to help her. I saw when we were linked that she wasn't trying to be evil. She was being used just like us. DRB_KAC's memories fled back from his life on Imorak. Being emperor, the plot against him, his family murdered in front of him. He barely escaped. He fled into the desert to the only person he trusted, a high priest of Artubis. Building his kingdom had left a slew of dead armies in his wake. The priest had warned him about what his conquest would bring, but when he found the emperor half dead on the temple steps, he shook his head and helped him in. There's no escape from your crimes in this life. Perhaps in another. DRB_KAC was ritualistically immolated, bringing him here. The Emperor sees Ever leap into the rift. I don't want you to do anything I wouldn't, he yells as he disappears. The man previously designated as W1L_FR3 lands in an identical office. A solar flare blazing across the sky, and everything goes dark. The backup Null1L_KAN units come alive, running off the power they generated through decades-long calisthenic routines. With the constant threat of losing its power grid, the mind link of Cube 2 isn't taking any chances. The population would descend into absolute mayhem without it. People couldn't be trusted to run themselves, and it couldn't trust them to rebuild the network in a way that would serve the mind link. 5. People say it good to be king, but I think no. Be king mean have headache all time. No one like king. King have to listen to people complain all time, and then people get mad when king try fix thing. They want how they want, not how king want. They do it better. Always. Captain Sparrow thinks to himself as he peels back the metal plates where the prisoner could be hiding. There had been increasing disappearances from the prison city of Yet Sarah, and the Tavian government was putting pressure on him and his guards to find the leak's source. The weird part was that the prisoners didn't stay gone. Most of them returned with strange technology wreaking havoc throughout the metropolitan prison as the gang factions fought for control. They had to be stopped. Germaine, leader of the Korean techno-magic, crouches at the feet of the Neath captain, hoping her scavenged cloaking technology would hold up. She knew it was a matter of time before she was caught or too old to keep fighting, but while she was still breathing, albeit through mechanical lungs, she was going to keep fighting for her city. Who know where they hide, Captain Sparrow says. Why they think me able to find them, I know not. I know only break bone, Hear scream, give fix spot, break bone. Germain stifles a laugh, erupting from him speaking honestly. The Neaths were idiots, and she had never known one of them who was aware of how dumb they are. You want reason to laugh? Captain Sparrow yells, and Germain leaps away as he stomps his feet, the cloaking device failing. I break you in pieces until you confess. The KTM's leader initiates the small site-to-site transport to move down the alleyway and leaves the Neath captain staring after her. She go downtown, he yells into his communicator. Head her off Guggen Street. He stops to catch his breath as Germain gets further and further away. You no like when you meet my friends. As she approaches the doorway her gang controls, she sees a troop of Neath guards coming her way. She knows if she's caught, Captain Sparrow would be good to his word. More of her body would be ripped out and replaced. She adjusts her orange satin tunic and teleports behind them, drawing a long sword from her molecular compression bag. They pass by without noticing her, lost in their conversation. She could easily kill all of them, but their green blood would be all over her new clothes, and she would have to change before she went to the club. The hotel didn't have a dress code there, per se, but they upheld a certain aesthetic that applied to everyone regardless of origin. Germain pulls out the key from her tunic, unlocking the door and gets Sarah to enter her room in the Phoenix Club. Inside, she finds slimy creatures getting drunk and carrying on. Aye, lassie, one of them calls to her. We were told this room was unoccupied, so we thought we'd get a little extra space. You're welcome to join us. No, I'll pass, Germain says. I'm meeting someone. Enjoy the room. She steps out the door onto the spiraling ramp lined with doors, looking up in amazement as she always does at the top floors lost in the shadows. The Korean Technomagic's leader heads to the lobby, easing through the different species who gather there to the darkened corner of the bar where an ancient man sits, his rotting skin hanging off his bones. You're late, he rasps. When no one talks to you, crowds are the loneliest places. I'm sorry, Germain says, her robotic hand touching his. I wanted to be sure I looked all right. Sensors in her fingers feel his cold skin and she holds back a shudder. The old man smiles. No need for flattery, he says. I'll sell you Central's tech either way. He reaches into his pocket, pulling out owl-like hamsters, and offers them. They're experimental. You're not going to find anything like it on the market, he croaks before spasming with a coughing fit. He wipes spit from his mouth. With a few tweaks, you'll be able to get untold amounts of data to use as you see fit. With a little extra work, you'll dominate your world, have people bowing at your command. They'll erase me, of course, if they ever find out that I was the one who gave these to you. Flankar, this is too much, Germain says. We're not paying you enough for what these are worth. Why this risk? Why are you giving us something this powerful? I can't die, he says. Being removed from existence would be a blessing. I've seen governments rise and fall. This one? Their desire to control us will destroy everything. 6. Moments after Connie closes the door on New Trenton, she finds herself in the Phoenix Club's room and the door opens again. Gertie steps out, her gun drawn. You can't escape justice, Connie, she says. You killed a citizen I've sworn to protect. If I let you escape, Sparrow will hold me accountable. You have to come back, or so help me. Your goddess didn't make that world, the creature in her snarls. She's a fake. Gertie hesitates, stunned to hear her friend talking like that. Come with me, Connie says. Be free from what that alien brought on you and your people. If she was all-powerful, why didn't she heal you instead of replacing your bodies with technology? Sakan takes advantage of Gertie's confusion, making Connie leap at her, wrestling the gun away. She then aims at New Trenton's finest. You want it to end this way? Do you? Are you going to cling to your sense of justice, whatever that means, to the point that it gets you killed? Are you? Or do you want to take a walk back through that door and tell Sparrow or whoever else wants to know that you couldn't find me and that I just disappeared into a cloud of smoke? Because this is your chance. After this, I can't guarantee what we're going to do to you. I can tell you that it won't be pretty. The bullets will just slow us down. The beast inside me wants me to tear you apart. Gertie puts up her hands, backing up to the door. Connie, stop. This isn't you. Maybe it is, and you never knew me, she says. I never belonged there. I was considered a freak because I wasn't like the rest of you. I played the part because I was never brainwashed into believing we were safe. I needed to see the world for myself, and this is my moment. Now get out and let me live my life. I'm going to be free to be who I am. The deputy follows the hotel's directions, locking and unlocking the door 3 times before opening into the Temple of the Winged Lion in New Trenton. It won't end well for you, she says. Sparrow's protection has a price, but we live in safety there. She drops to her knees, clutching her stomach and gasping for breath. She wants us to be safe, and the only way she could do that is to make sure that we can't leave. If you stay, your insides will rot, Connie says. It's what you get for your devotion. The deputy grips her teeth in pain, and Connie picks her up, rolling her back into her own world. If Sparrow made this world herself, she wouldn't treat you how she does. She keeps you as prisoners there. It's not the work of a loving creator, it's the work of a weak being trying to not be caught in her lies. You can find your way back here when you're tired of running back to her for help. Until then, forget you ever knew me. 7. So it thought it would be best if we win and capture them ourselves, Certain says to Agent Grobley, stepping through the door from Central into their room in the Phoenix Club. The Illic agent made most other people nervous because they couldn't come to grips with his ever-shifting appearance, but Ellen, who identified people by the heat she tasted coming from them, always felt at home with this constant high temperature. Sakan immediately directs Connie's attention to Certain as he and the lizard enter the lobby. That's him, she whispers to herself in awe. He survived. Against the humans' wishes, Sequoia walks them through the crowd and brings them face to face. Marilyn helps Sebastian into his holosuit and then fires it up. The otter sees himself in the view screen, laughing. We look like Jelvins. They'll never suspect a thing. I want you to use extreme caution, Sebastian, she says. We look like them, but know nothing of their culture. If tested, we'll stand out like we aren't wearing them. Sebastian nods, the two of them stepping into the house of Kamatosho's hallway. We need to find the renegade and bring him back to justice. Are you ready to do that? The other nods in a surprisingly Jelvin way. I've been training, he says. We will attempt a psychological approach first. If that fails, psionics, and then brute force. Marilyn imitates Benaryl Sewer's subtle smile. I don't know if we'll get all the steps in, she says, in the elevator ride up to the living quarters. Let's hope he sees reason. They nod to the Jelvins who get on where they get off, heading for Griffin's room. The disguised dolphin warrior puts a scanner up to the door, peering through the wall. In Watsura's office, Sarah Kay can't believe what she's hearing. I said collect it, not destroy it, her boss says. We need a creature as powerful as an Imogen to be our ally. With all due respect, sir, you haven't been yourself, and it's been a huge problem. And who have I been, Sora demands. Why were you taking orders from someone other than me? Couldn't you run quantum scans and check my biosignatures? All of them came back saying that you were you and nothing was wrong. Well, something is definitely wrong. We need to figure it out before it happens again. I haven't been here. This whole place falls apart if we can't trust each other. Marilyn unlocks the apartment door with an electronic screwdriver, and Sebastian follows her inside, flipping on the lights. Griffin is nowhere to be seen, but in his place there are Furbtech everywhere. Oh my gods, the Dolphin Warrior says. A hologram flickers and the two agents draw their weapons. I know how this looks, the image of Griffin says, but believe me when I say that this was not what I was trying to do. The creature we were sent to destroy is good, if there was ever anything that was good. If you have the pleasure of meeting it, I'm sure you'll come to the same conclusion. I had to protect it, and this was the result. I've fled now only to save my own life. Everwolf finds 5A_K0N in the darkness. The network, she whispers. They'll be lost without it. She looks at him in the dim light filtering through the window slits. Why'd you come after me? I'm nothing. A small piece in a large machine. Ellen steps between Connie and Certain as the human approaches to the vastly different species in the lobby. We thought you were dead, she says to him in the dark language of the Illic. My father went looking for you after you disappeared. He believed that you'd survived when no one else did. Did he find you? Is he coming back? If Certain is shocked to hear a human speaking his native tongue, he doesn't show it. Why do you want to have me killed? Sequi asks through Connie. I was perfectly fine in my own corner of the multiverse. My dreams give you and your people life. I'm the reason you exist at all. Why do you want to remove me? It'll end everything. Never walks with 5A_K0N into the fading light outside. I know what it's like to be without a home, he says. I was so determined to see the multiverse, I crushed mine in an attempt to escape. I could cope with the change. I knew that you couldn't. Certain pushes past his reptile bodyguard, towering over Connie Tong. You think you're a benevolent dreamer, allowing the creatures you make to do as they choose. You think their freedom absolves you of the choices they make. You want to believe that because you're good, they'll figure out how to be good, but they don't. I've seen every reality you've created, and the common denominator is cruelty and selfishness. The Manosphere you created as food for us became wise and fought back, capturing us. They tortured me, tore off my wings, made me completely unrecognizable. From behind Certain, Ellen looks at the Illic with a newfound sympathy and respect. First, I wandered to get my bearings. There was no place for me in any universe because no one trusts what they can't comprehend. But then I found my way to Central, and my anonymity finally became my greatest strength. I could go anywhere and do anything. I worked my way up to the bureau ranks on my reputation. I was a living ghost that did as I pleased. I lurked in plain sight, and I got the information I need by harnessing the cruelty that was inherent everywhere. I was useful. Impeccable, in fact. But that didn't make them recognize me. It was all for nothing. And then we found you. We've searched for the great cause forever. Most scientists believe that you would be an abstract moment in history to be debated about, but I knew that since the multiverse was continuing to expand, we were dealing with a living organism deep inside the folds of space-time. And there you were. While they're looking for you to come to some understanding about the nature of reality, I have been searching for you so that we can end this once and for all. The longer things exist, the more suffering occurs. I can't escape what has happened to me unless it all finally ends. I won't let others suffer like I do. Certain slashes at Connie, and the creature inside her takes control, flipping into the crowd to keep her throat from getting torn open. The Illic leaps into the air, landing in front of her and smashing a small child with a flower growing from the top of her head. The girl's mother screams, and hotel security, a Galki, and some griffins from Furbia swarm Certain, grabbing his arms, and he surrenders without a fight. You can do whatever you desire in the Phoenix Club, the Galki says, but we draw the line at injuring other guests. You and your people will be restricted from the hotel, your room sealed until a formal investigation can be made into your world for the safety of others. As darkness settles on Cube 2, Ever meets the inhabitants of the world who have woken up from their linked state, confused and alone. He hadn't wanted to make his home here. There was so much more he wanted to see, but they seemed to need direction. Jermaine slides through the crowd trying to help Connie, but the creature snarls at the cyborg, "Get off me, I'm fine," before Connie takes control, smiling. "I'm sorry." "Not a people person, huh?" Jermaine asks. "Don't worry, you'll get used to us." "I'm usually the outsider," Connie says. "It's weird not to be the only unique one here. Where I'm from, everyone looks like you. I don't know what to expect here. I mean, what is that thing?" she asks, pointing to a shambling mound of abstract shapes. "Oh, that's just Greg," Jermaine laughs. "He got caught between two non-linear dimensions and found himself here. Pretty smart once you understand his ramblings." Ever gathers as many people as he can find into a gymnasium, sending out groups to seek out food and bedding for everyone. "You're not just using us to recycle us when you're done, are you?" 5A_K0N asks when everything is quiet and they're finally alone. Griffin's hologram looks dismayed. "You've seen the Ferb tech have spread far beyond anything we can control. I'm sure I'll be blamed for that and promptly erased. It'd be the only hope of stopping its spread if I were to cease to exist. I know that I swore to give everything for the CIB, and even if it meant my non-existence, I would maintain its integrity. But it wasn't my fault. I wanted more than anything to stop them, to keep them under control, but we designed them too well. I don't know if there's anywhere in the universe for me to run that you won't be able to find me eventually, but I hope that when you do, I will have figured out how to stop them." Once Russ stands beside Sarah Kay in the VR chamber, looking at the millions of FurbTech feeds from the countless numbers of worlds. I did all of that, he says, in awe. You did. No, we tried to warn you about the ramifications, but you were dead set on finding the Imogen. We did find her, sort of, but then she slipped away again since she's not physically in any place at all. We didn't account for her riding the Quanta. Clearly, I can't be trusted to make good decisions, Sarah says, pulling up a tablet. We're going to have to make an executive order until the situation is handled. Effective immediately, you're in charge of the CIB, he says as he types. You'll have to fix this. The disguised Marilyn and Sebastian slip out of Griffin's room, running to Legimir. Is the Honorable Griffin in? He asks. We need to get hopping. They shake their heads. What were you doing in this room if he isn't in? He asks suspiciously. We can't find our FurbTechs, Honorable One, Sebastian says in perfect Jalvin. Why didn't you pull up your gloves link? Legimir asks, pointing to his own. They can't be apart from you for more than 12 hours. Odd they didn't come find you. They've been acting strangely, Honorable One, Marilyn says. Disoriented. We've cuddled them as much as we can, but they seem very distant from us. Are they broken? That doesn't seem right at all, the Jalvin says, looking concerned. What are your names? We need to look closer at the entire batch we issued to your family. Marilyn quickly draws her phaser, shooting him. Grab him, she hisses. Don't let him hit the floor. The otter leaps quickly but misses, Legimir landing with a thump. Sequi takes over Connie's body as she speaks to Germaine. I want your help, she says. I need to reach the government on Central, but the Illic made them shut up all the rooms that led directly there. Do you know another way? Please. It's urgent. Certain is fuming as he locks and unlocks the door to Central. We were this close, Ellen. This close. I had the Imogen within my grasp. All this could have ended. He stands on the threshold looking out over the beach stretching before him and into the ocean beyond. We can't go back empty-handed. We'll be demoted for sure, be working desks from here on. No, Ellen, we have to get her, seek her out, and destroy her. 8. As soon as Connie set foot in Yet-Zara, she knew she'd made a huge mistake. Germaine shouted, There's a prisoner escaping, and then disappeared as giant guards closed in on the girl from New Trenton. With a fist bigger than her, she's knocked into a brick wall, and she hears her bones break, but she, surprisingly, couldn't feel it. No one escaped from our city, the leader howls, stomping Connie's legs nearly flat. It went on like that for weeks, maybe months. She couldn't be sure since she lost count of the time she swore it was the end, only to find herself floating in a saline tank, her limbs, spine, or organs being stitched back together by tiny, itching little creatures. Apart from the itching, none of it hurt. The creatures inside her whispered their condolences, telling her they were taking the beating, but the pain part aside, she was the only one living through the agony. It enraged her. She hadn't wanted this. What she'd wanted was a quiet day at the office, to make up with Gertie and have dinner at their favorite restaurant. She didn't ask for them to involve her in getting to Central or finding her father. They had used her, made a huge mistake in the process, and now they were trying to placate her by taking her pain. It wasn't her pain. It was theirs. They deserved it, and she would inflict more on them if she could ever get a hold of them. Eventually it stopped, as the guards didn't find her entertaining anymore and moved on to another unfortunate soul. Connie was left alone in a darkened cell. Every part of her body, hands, face, brain, had been replaced, so she had a hard time believing she was even the same person anymore. She certainly didn't feel the same. The only thing that kept her going was her rage. She would find those winged creatures and make them pay for what they'd put her through. Connie knew that they could hear her thoughts, and she let them know it. She was coming for them. Then, just like the guards gave up on her without any notice, the one called Sakan left too, taking the other one with her. Connie was left alone in a world that she didn't understand, imprisoned in a dark place with no hope for parole. As much as she tried to convince the guards who fed her that she didn't belong here and she had no idea where she even was, they didn't want to hear it. Every lock has a key. Every system has a flaw, and she was determined to find it. She didn't know how long it would take her, but she knew she would find it. There was no way she was going to that torture room again. The body she had now, hers or not, she intended to keep. And the creatures inside or brutes outside, no one was going to take it away from her again. So she watched everything they did, listening, waiting for her chance. 9. Tetraserini was always being watched. It wasn't paranoia, it was the constant presence of Empress Pro 2 always in his mind. He could feel her monitoring his thoughts as he ran his errands for her throughout the cities. They were all unnecessary tasks. In a world where most people had some psychic ability to translocate over great distances and pass through even solid objects, there was no need for a single individual to travel by foot, but she made him anyway. She could feel that she was testing him. By giving him so much freedom alone in the open country, she was almost daring him to run. But she could sense that it was all a ruse. Even if he thought about escaping, there would be half a dozen of her guards on him, forcing him into submission. So he waited. Griffin fled to a world that they wouldn't look for him. Ahriman. It had a central outpost there, but agents weren't allowed to leave them due to the planet-wide conflict. The sentient trees, which served as homes, decided to take back the land and absorb the people. But Griffin had contacts among the Perotia, who he hoped wouldn't eat him. Truth be told, Tetraserini wanted to get out of the cities as much as possible. Creatures had sought after him for centuries for what he could do for them, but now, among the quiet of the abandoned towns, he was getting some peace. Even the Empress's monitoring was a blessing to him. It kept his thoughts focused here in the present. No letting his mind wander to how he was going to find Sequi or contemplate his mistakes. The trips to the wasteland kept Tetraserini placid in a perpetual now state. Maybe it was the Empress's influence, but he felt he would be alright if he never left Yama. For one, he was really good at getting what she needed for the dukes, earls, and viscounts, which is saying something in a world of beings who can manipulate each other's minds. The only downside was when Tetraserini left cities, people died. The Perotia Grove wasn't happy to see Griffin. "You warmbloods betray us," they whisper. "We give you clothes and houses. What thanks do we get? You massacre us." His hair was cut like a Jelvin's, and he wore a silk robe. He realizes the trees have no way of recognizing him, so Griffin whispers in their language, "I am your friend." They creep toward him, their slow movements almost imperceptible as they reach out their branches and pull Griffin close. He doesn't fight them, relaxing in their embrace as they release their pollen and it spreads over him. "If I can't stay here, I'm worse off than dead," he says. "I'll never have existed. Merge with me and see." The dingo returned to Pro 2 after each errand, laying his head on the Empress's lap to tell her everything that had happened. He knew that she had seen it all with him, but she seemed to like to hear him recount it as she stroked his ears. For a woman who ruled her planet with an iron fist, she was very lonely and had a real soft spot for him. It was in these conversations that Tetraserini learned how things used to be on Yama before the atmosphere had thinned, all the crops died, and the animals with it. It was then that the mutations began, and those that lacked supernatural abilities of travel, mind control, and subatomic manipulations were killed by those who could obtain the resources. While he learned much of their ways and why the Empress had to be so harsh as she was, it was only a one-way relationship. He was her slave, and there was no escape. The central agent awoke in the mind of the Perotia Grove, his body wrapped in their branches. He was one with the trees, and Griffin could feel the other tree groves howling at them to just absorb him, but the Perotia stood their ground saying, "This animal saved all of reality and us. As sentient beings, it's our duty to protect him." The Yaman Dukes hate Tetraserini because of the Empress's love for him, and their jealous minds pried into him at every opportunity. Things would be out of place, too. Deliberately placed provisions for his trips. One time his entire camp had been moved far away from him while he slept. In the cities and in the countryside he could sense he was being watched, but when he turned to see who it was, there would be no one. The dingo knew they were setting a trap for him, so he had to be on a constant alert. He didn't know from where or when the attack would come. If they had their way, they would simply get rid of him, but since he was under the constant protection of the Empress, they were doing the next best thing, which was to slowly drive him mad. 10. Miss Tick. The Arachnus from Patola had done it. Captain Thornhead's key, the doofus, had gained access to the Great Maze, a pathway between worlds that only heroes could walk. She wanted him to know he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. For too long, the heroes on her world loaded over the common people like they didn't have to eat, sleep, and poop just like everyone else. Now she proved him wrong. The sun rose on Cube 2, finding 5A_K0N cradled in Ever's arms. She felt everything was going to be alright. She heard the call of null1L_KAN unit drawing her outside, and she joined the population in the street. Their savior had come for them. We are only taking those of you who are bred here, the machine announces. The rest of you will die like the viruses you are. Its head spins 360 degrees, scanning the crowd. Designations W1L_FR3, 5A_K0N, CAK_BRD. You must leave our community. You are not our responsibility. We can't allow you to consume our resources. You do not belong here. Ever is surprised to know that there is someone else there from another world. Where am I supposed to go, demands a man who is a mirror copy of DRB_KAC. I've worked for the network all my life. The null1L_KAN unit shrugs, moving away. People pour from the surrounding buildings, converging on the machine. They climb on each other to form a giant body, passing null1L_KAN up so it becomes the head, and grip each other to form the limbs before striding off down the street. What do we do without a network? 5A_K0N asks Ever, panic in her voice. I mentioned I crashed my universe to escape it, right? He says. I'll find us a way. Her spider senses tingled the entire time she was in the maze. Prey was everywhere. Things that had wandered in from different worlds and gotten themselves lost, but she found them all, paralyzing them with her hypnotic gaze before draining out their souls. I don't know who I am without the network, CAK_BRD says. I've been inside it too long. I had another life once. He pauses, lost in thought. I've forgotten it. Who you were is no longer important here, Ever says. That life is over. What matters is who you are now. We need to work together in order to survive. She and I are newcomers and don't know our way around. Since you live here, you must know where we can find some shelter, food, water. You can let us know about any dangers. I don't know. The network did everything. I was seeing but not aware. I have no distinct memories of anything. I couldn't even tell you where I lived before yesterday. I know what you mean, 5A_K0N says. It's like waking from a dream. You have residual feelings from everything you saw, but the details are all gone as reality comes back. Looks like we'll have to be the old-fashioned way, Ever smiles. People have foraged for millions of years. I'm sure we can make do. We should move while it's still light. They explored the city, finding shelter but no supplies. Ever had never seen anything like it. There was no trash anywhere. Whenever we wanted food, the network made it, 5A_K0N says. Then she realizes and unscrews her eyepiece, plugging in manually. They're coming for us, CAK_BRD says, glazing over. They're not happy about us breaking the rationing pattern. It didn't take long for the network to find them. Outside, Ever could see the null1L_KAN unit glowing in the dark street, and he could hear the footsteps of people heading directly for them. Get ready, CAK_BRD says as the door swings open, and he pounces on T8_M30, expertly taking him down. Ever knew a professional fighter when he saw one, and whoever CAK_BRD had been before he arrived on Cube 2, he had been clearly trained. The men fighting him had the advantage of working as a unit, but he took on the entire mob himself, dropping them to the ground in pairs. Ever stood back and watched, not wanting to get involved with the insanity that was driving the man who had seemed to be so confused before. 5A_K0N nudges Ever, wires dangling from her eye, holding an armload of food. I've got enough for a couple of days. Let's get out of here. They can't track us if we don't log into the network. She sees CAK_BRD. Where did he learn how to do that? I don't know, but we should go while they're distracted, Ever whispers. He leads them into the other room, sliding open a window and popping the screen. The violence behind them stops and CAK_BRD enters the room with a wild gleam in his eye. Where do you think you're going? He asks. You're not abandoning your emperor, are you? He grabs 5A_Kanal by the back of the neck. You're too valuable to let go. How will I access the network without you? I have needs like any man. In the light of what he had seen CAK_BRD do, Ever knew he was no match for him, so he puts up his hands in an attempt to placate him. Hey, easy. I was trying to get our friend here to someplace safe so she didn't get hurt in all the fighting, or worse, get recaptured or destroyed. We have to be smart about this, Emperor. CAK_BRD squints at Ever, not believing him, but letting it slide. See that nothing happens to her. Her safety is the only thing between you and an early grave. The Arachnists understood now why they only allowed heroes off their world. On Patola, her powers made her just another ordinary citizen, but out here, she cackled, they made her a god. Their weapons were useless against her, and she feasted. I want you to take control of that thing, CAK_BRD says, holding 5A_Kanal arm and pointing at the null 1L_KN unit outside. We can build an army for ourselves. We don't have them on my world, she says. You have to keep it still long enough for me to hack it. No promises, though. Ever is already out the window, moving quietly toward it with CAK_BRD right behind, circling wide. I didn't mean now. The machine's head swivels towards CAK_BRD's position. Emperor Panem Cake, it announces to the speakers, you have been found in violation of Temporal Law 13 SC F465-91, the unlawful possession of another person's body obtained by guile, force, or coercion. As such, you are obligated to surrender the possessed body to the nearest government agency and return to your planet of origin or face the maximum penalty. I surrender, CAK_BRD says, rising with his arms up. The body's yours. The null 1L_KAN unit moves toward him and Ever tackles it. Sucker, CAK_BRD smiles. The moment Miss Tick sets her feet on Cube 2, she sensed him. A power so great the mortal body could barely contain it. A soul that walked between realities at will. The one that was holding the fabric of the multiverse together. She needed to consume him. She hadn't known why she needed to steal Thornhead's key. All she knew was on Patola, where the battle between good and evil, the elaborate plans foiled by inept henchmen, the annoying sweetness of those who thought they were justified by their goodness, was boring her, and she had to get away from it. But now she understood. It was for this reason. She was being drawn here to the man that wasn't a man. 11. Legimir was slowly recovering, and he thanked his ancestral spirit, Obi-Icarius, for checking on him when she did. The alien attack put a hole in his chest, destroying his third and fourth lungs, and Dorn Kep's best doctors were struggling to repair the damage from the unknown weapon. They're coming for us, he said to Benario when she came to visit him. They look like us, and they talk like us, but there's something else. The matron would like to chalk his ravings up to a fever, but the doctors all agreed that whatever attacked him was unlike anything they'd seen. They can't know I survived, he says. There's definitely something strange going on. In the centuries Benario had been on Ahayel, she'd never felt so alive. In fact, she'd been feeling practically invincible, but this news disturbed her. They allowed other species on their planet through the interdimensional exchange, so there was no non-nefarious motive to disguise themselves. I want to move to another apartment, Legimir says to his great-great-great-grandmother. I need to be where they won't be able to find me if they come back. You're perfectly safe here, Benario says. Squeezing his hands to her glove releases a sleeping agent under his skin. You need to get better before we do anything with you. But she only said that for his benefit. The matron of the House of Kamatosho knew it wasn't paranoia. Whoever these aliens were, they would be coming back to make sure they finished the job. It's true, he was safest in their ancestral skyscraper, but they had slipped past their security so easily, it would be impossible to keep them out. In her second heart, she knew they'd arrived because of the devices she bred and sold. She had started feeling stronger when that wolf explorer with his bizarre pet had showed up, and now she had finally rid herself of him, so there was no one to bring shame on her family. She wanted to keep it that way, and she was going to do whatever it took. So she left Lejmir in his apartment, in his own bed, and she let the word get out that he was still very much alive. The Furbtech were modified to keep constant surveillance on him and rewired so that the network would notify her the moment there was an undocumented presence on the ground. She would be ready for them, whoever they were. No matter how powerful and no matter what government they represented, she was going to silence them. She didn't know what they knew or how many of them there were, but she was very, very patient, and she would silence them one by one. 12. Sarah Kay hit many dead ends searching for Certain. Since no one could tell you what he looked like and he cloaked his quantum signature, no agent could tell her if they had seen him. It was one of the rare times she wished they'd issued a Furbtech device to everyone so tracking and monitoring rogue agents would be possible. She, of course, realized the security breach that would pose, and so pushed the thought to the back of her mind as she continued to search. He wasn't going to allow himself to get caught, which is why he never trusted anyone except Agent Ellen Grobley, who had disappeared with him. She was the only known agent to be able to readily identify him, which is probably why he kept her close. Despite her unique appearance, she was capable of blending into almost any world, passing herself off in many different guises. He must have planned his coup from the beginning, always with one eye over his shoulder. She wasn't going to let the setbacks stop her. She had a doctorate in cleodynamics. Seeing timeline shifts were natural to her. Certain's movement would make ripples. They lay on the beach, soaking up the sun and waiting for the patrol's mistake. They always do, Certain says. Once things become routine, everyone gets sloppy. I want to get off this planet and into the outside as soon as possible. By now they'll have found out about the Phoenix Club's investigation and are pinpointing our location. Ellen nods, fascinated by his power to predict other people's movements. She was a creature of instinct. She acted when the moment was right, never thinking ahead or making plans. She didn't have the mental capacity for it and was amazed she ended up anywhere at all. Things just happened to her, and she moved along with them. As how she ended up leaving Centric to begin with and how she got into the CIB. It was by mere chance that she had the unholy bullets and was able to get Baradian alone. If she had thought it through, she wouldn't have done it, but Certain made things work out. Give me the neural reducer, Certain demands, breaking Ellen out of her thoughts. We don't have any more. You used the last one hours ago, she says quietly. Then we can't wait any longer, he says, getting up and dusting the sand off himself. It'd be better to get caught than death to go through the neural withdrawals. They walk casually toward the resort, looking like a couple of tourists enjoying their exotic vacation. Certain nods to the desk clerk inside, the young merman barely looking up from his monitor. As they get off the elevator and round the corner to their rooms, Ellen activates the cloaking device, hiding them from the cameras. They stop at a door marked electrical, across from 1528, and Certain checks over his shoulder before pulling out a device to disarm the security keeping them out. Hold your breath, he says, as gas sprays from the lock. They wait for the air to clear before he pushes the door open. Certain enters the tiny room with conduits lining the walls. They're running way too much power in here, he says, and it all seems to be going here. He opens a large metal storage closet and an ocean wave splashes him. Ah, Centric. Not ideal, but we'll take what we can get. Close enough to our world that their tech will match. You want us to investigate the unlawful entry into Centric? Terrence asks Sarah Kay. She nods stoically, but then adds, but be covert. We don't need to create an incident. The Alex scans the crowd of large black birds, merpeople, trees in their automated planters, and humans with symbiotic beetles attached to their brainstems, all waiting for the interdimensional transport. He supposed they were getting to their lives and jobs. He almost envied them. At the end of their day, they could return to their loved ones and close their eyes in peace. That life was far behind him. Deep inside himself, he always doubted as to whether or not he would be able to experience that again or if he would always be on the run. Going back to his homeworld wasn't an option. He had burned all of his bridges at the CIB. His only hope now was to find the Imogen and destroy it. Stop everything as if it had never started. Then, and only then, would he be able to find any peace. There was a tree in the crowd that was getting too close, and he moved away with Ellen to the far end of the terminal. They had each other, at least, he thought. 13. It doesn't matter if they don't know it was us, Sebastian says to Marilyn as the transversor arrives back at Cuba Knoll. We murked a guy who asked us a question. There's so much more at stake than one man's life, the dolphin says patiently. Like Central's treaty to stand for Al comes with the threat of war between our worlds. Our compliance with that agreement allows us to continue trading within the interdimensional League of Planets, without which we would become just another D-rank universe. So yes, sometimes we have to be unscrupulous to keep the peace. That's the cost? The otter asked as they enter the darkened castle. I joined the CIB because I was hoping to bring peace to my homeworld and the multiverse as a whole. What do you think we're doing, Marilyn demands. You think peace comes by wishing for it? Do you think we can sit around, talk things out, and it will happen? That's not how it works. Peace comes from you and me making others fear us. I don't want people to fear us. Where I come from, fear was the only thing keeping Karns in line. As soon as fear was removed, all those repressed emotions came pouring out. It was fear that got my brother killed, and I can't be a part of doing that to others. Well, I'm sorry I have to do this to you, the senior agent says, taking a small glass cube from her coat and smashing it against the otter's chest. But we spent too much time training you, and you know too much. The otter shimmers, and then blinks. You want to follow the report on our mission, or you want me to? Sebastian asks. Why don't you do it, the dolphin says. Opera leadership and myself are very interested in hearing your impression on your first field assignment as an agent. The otter smiles at her. I'll write one up as soon as I get out of the bath, he says. It's good to be home. I'm sure a lot's changed around here while we've been gone. I'm sure a lot has, Marilyn says. Go see if any of your friends are still here. We'll be in touch. Sebastian disappears into the dark castle, and she watches with a twinge of sadness. It never got easier. The young otter she met on Savannah was gone, and there would be no getting him back. This was the life that she had chosen for herself. This was the life that she lived. She wonders if at one point she was just like him, desiring a type of peace that had less to do with power and more to do with goodness. Was she ever that hopeful? Maybe she was. Maybe she was just like that and someone did to her what she had just done to him. She didn't know if she would thank them for it.
End of Chapter 4. Thank you for listening to this audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, a series novelization written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you'd like to read more of this book, read chapters from the series, listen to audio, and further support the development of this project, please go to patreon.com/SheCameFromNowhere, link in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe this video. Until next time, we'll see you soon.